All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into Sufism.
Okay.
We're going to be really like unpacking this text called The Secret.pdf.
Okay.
It's a collection of teachings, anecdotes, really gives you a peek into this
Right.
fascinating tradition of Sufism.
Yeah.
And I think our mission today is to uncover the essence of the Sufi path and how it uses this thing
Yes.
called annihilation of the self to connect with the divine.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that's always, been really fascinating to me. It's like this idea that there's got to be something more
Yeah.
than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
This idea that what we see is not all there is.
Right. Right.
And I think this might hold some clues.
Yeah. And you know what I find really intriguing about Sufism is this beautiful paradox at its core.
Okay.
So it's a path within Islam, but instead of, emphasizing the separation from God, it kind of yearns for this direct, immersive experience.
Okay.
Almost like a merging with the divine.
Right. It's like that fundamental belief, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God.
Exactly.
So it's like this idea that God isn't separate from us.
Yes.
It's not this guy in the sky, but rather woven into the very fabric
Yes.
of existence.
Precisely. Yeah, this idea, it permeates every single aspect of Sufism,
Okay.
especially the concept of ishq.
Okay.
Now, it's more than just love. It's this total, all-consuming love, but directed towards God.
Okay.
And think about it this way.
Okay.
If God is not distant but present in everything,
Right.
then experiencing profound love for anything becomes a step closer to that divine union.
It's like every act of love, when truly felt, is almost like a
It is.
kind of prayer,
Yeah.
like a connection to something larger than ourselves.
It is, exactly.
That's beautiful.
And that deep, often ecstatic love is known as wad.
Okay.
And it's central to the Sufi experience.
So it's not just about quiet contemplation. It's about really passionate, embodied,
oh, yeah.
connection with the divine.
Embodied, yeah.
I mean, it makes you wonder, what would it be like to experience that level of connection,
I know.
that sense of oneness with something so much greater than ourselves?
Yeah.
It definitely makes the idea of just reading about spirituality
Yes.
seem kind of, dull in comparison,
Right.
doesn't it? But, in a lot of these stories, there's this constant emphasis on the importance of a master, a teacher, a guide.
Right.
In the Sufi tradition,
Yeah.
it's not just pick up a book.
Exactly.
It seems like you need someone
Yes. Yes, you do.
to guide you.
That's a crucial point.
Hmm.
Because in Sufism, the master isn't just a teacher spouting information.
Okay.
It's different. They're more like a living embodiment of the truth.
Okay.
Someone who has already walked that path
Right.
of ego dissolution and can therefore guide others to do the same.
So it's less like a lecture hall and more like an apprenticeship.
Exactly.
An apprentice.
Like that story of the guy who bounces from teacher to teacher his whole life,
Yes.
amassing knowledge, but never really embodying it.
Never embodying it.
Sure.
Bahauddin Naqshband, a famous Sufi master.
He used a great analogy for this.
Okay.
He said that this man had spiritual indigestion.
Oh, wow.
He was so busy stuffing himself with knowledge
Right.
that he never actually stopped to digest it,
Yeah.
to let it transform him.
Right.
A master helps you break down those spiritual concepts
Right.
so they become a lived experience, not just head knowledge.
Totally. Yeah, it's like if I binge too many podcasts,
Exactly.
I end up feeling more overwhelmed than enlightened.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes less is more.
Absolutely. Less is more.
But I'm curious, how does this all tie into this whole annihilation of self idea?
Yeah.
Or as they call it in Sufism, fana. Honestly, it sounds kind of intense.
It is intense, but not in a destructive way. So
Okay.
fana is the ultimate goal
Okay.
of the Sufi path. But it's not about erasing yourself.
Okay.
It's about dissolving that illusion of separation between you and the divine.
Okay.
So imagine the ego, that sense of a separate me. It's
Right.
like a drop
Right.
merging back into the ocean
Wow.
of existence.
It's about realizing your true nature, which is
Yes.
one with everything.
One with everything, yeah.
It's like that story in the Secret.pdf
Yeah.
about the scholar who goes to the poet's society,
Yes. Yeah.
asking for perception, right? Thinking that if he could just see more,
Yes.
know more,
Mhm.
that was the key.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Saadi wisely tells him, not without wisdom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like he was hinting that true perception comes from somewhere else.
Right.
Not just from accumulating more facts.
Right. Yeah, it's not just about the information.
Exactly.
It's about something deeper.
The Sufi path reminds us that knowledge without wisdom
Right.
The kind that comes from shedding the ego can actually be dangerous.
Wow.
It's like the old saying, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Right. Right.
You can have all the information in the world,
Yeah.
but if you're approaching life from this place of ego,
Right.
it won't lead to true fulfillment.
Which brings us to that story of the guy
Yes.
who's so set on proving reincarnation
Yes.
scientifically.
I know.
Like approaching this profound spiritual concept
Right.
with a rigid agenda.
With an agenda.
Totally missing the point.
Completely missing the point. The Sufi path is about surrender, not conquest.
Wow.
It's about letting go of the need to control, to know all the answers, and being open to a reality that exists beyond the limits of your current understanding.
I love that.
Yeah.
Letting go of the need to know all the answers.
Yeah.
Because it's like, who really knows, right?
Exactly. Who knows?
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
It's like we build all these walls around ourselves, right? Thinking they're protecting us.
Right.
But maybe they're actually trapping us.
Yeah.
Keeping us from experiencing like the
Absolutely.
fullness of life, you know?
It's true.
And it's fascinating to me how like even seemingly good things
Yeah.
can become like obstacles on the path if we're not careful.
That's right. It's easy to get caught up in these external pursuits.
Yeah.
And we can mistake those for like, true spiritual growth.
Okay.
Like we can get attached to religious rituals or social activism,
Right.
even intellectual exploration. Yeah. And we can use these as substitutes
Okay.
for like genuine inner transformation.
So it's not about like checking boxes or accumulating knowledge,
No, not at all.
but about a deeper, more fundamental shift
Yes.
in how we see ourselves in the world.
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, remember that story of Alok,
Okay, yeah.
the disciple who
Yeah.
was so attached, he clung so tightly to
Yeah.
Jesus's words?
Yeah.
He was treating them like a crutch
Okay.
instead of seeking that direct experience.
Right, like you can memorize every sacred text,
Right.
but if you're not letting those teachings like
Yes.
penetrate your heart,
Yeah,
if you're not embodying them in your daily life, then
Yeah.
what's the point?
exactly. Yeah, it becomes just another way for the ego
Right.
to assert itself.
Right.
Right? Like, look at me. I know all this stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But the Sufi path, it demands more
It does. It demands more. Yeah.
than just like intellectual assent.
Yeah.
It requires this like complete surrender of the ego.
Surrender.
This willingness to let go of everything you think you know
Yes.
and just dive headfirst into the unknown.
That's it. Into the unknown.
And that's where this concept of adab comes
Yes.
in, right?
Yes. Yes. Adab.
This idea of like complete surrender, obedience to the master,
Obedience.
even when their instructions seem, I don't know, kind of crazy.
Crazy.
Like that story of the disciple who was told to give all of his money
I know.
to a brothel gatekeeper.
Right.
I mean, I got to admit, that one left me scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah. It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
And deeply unsettling if you're approaching it
Yeah.
from like a purely rational perspective.
Totally.
But I think that's the point, you know?
Right.
It's about shattering that disciple's attachment to his own logic,
Right.
to his limited understanding of how he thinks the world works.
Okay.
It's about learning to trust
Okay.
in something
Yeah, yeah.
beyond his comprehension.
So it's about cultivating like a radical trust.
Radical trust, yeah.
One that can hold like yes and no
Exactly.
at the same time
Yes and no without collapsing.
without
Exactly.
completely falling apart. Right.
That's it.
Like, okay, I trust this even though I don't get it.
That's it. Precisely. It's about recognizing that the master might be operating
Right.
from a level of awareness
Right. That you can't even.
that the disciple can't even fathom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but choosing to trust that deeper intention,
Okay.
the essence, rather than,
Yeah.
getting hung up on the form.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that story of Ayaz and Mahmud,
Yeah.
where true love
Yeah.
was able to withstand
Right.
even like apparent contradictions.
And that makes me think of Mansur al-Halash,
Yes.
the Sufi mystic who was executed
Yes.
for proclaiming Ana al-Haq, I am the true.
I know.
Talk about a radical embodiment of this
Yeah.
idea of merging with the divine, right?
His story.
Like he fully went there.
He did. It illustrates the ultimate
Yeah.
realization of the Sufi path.
Wow.
This complete dissolution of the self
Mhm.
into the divine.
I mean, you have to wonder, was he a madman? Right.
Was he a mystic?
I know.
Or maybe in the realm of spiritual experience?
Yes.
Those two aren't so different after all.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then there's that story of the guy who spent 12 years in complete silence.
I know. Powerful.
Just sitting beside Bayezid, the master.
Just a mess.
No teachings, no instructions.
Just presence.
Just pure presence. Like, what do you...
I know.
It's incredible.
What do you even make of that?
It's a powerful testament to the transformative power of simply being in the presence of a master. Someone who embodies that state of unity, of fauna. It's like in that silence, in that shared space of pure being, this man underwent a profound transformation. It's beautiful. But it also begs the question, what does this radical approach to spirituality, this path of love and surrender and annihilation of the ego, what does that mean for those of us who aren't, Sufi mystics?
Exactly.
Like, how do we apply these ancient teachings to our, modern, messy lives?
How do we apply this?
Yeah, it's like our culture is so obsessed with this idea of, like, self-improvement. Always hustling. Always striving to become this, like,
idealized
version of ourselves.
Ourselves,
But the Sufi path, it kind of makes you wonder, like, maybe true liberation doesn't come from, like, building ourselves up. But from, like, letting go.
Surrendering to something bigger.
Surrendering. It's a radical proposition, isn't it?
It is.
To find freedom through surrender. But that's the paradox, that the Sufis they're inviting us to explore this and saying, look, our relentless pursuit of ego gratification, this clinging to control, to certainty. This is actually what's keeping us trapped in this cycle of suffering.
It's like that story in the Secret.pdf.
Yes.
About the dude who spends years obsessing over the meaning.
Yes. Tell me.
Of the letters IHMN.
Oh, yes.
And then, like, after the Sufi master dies, the guy finds out that those letters...
They meant nothing.
Meant nothing.
It was a cosmic joke.
It's like, what?
A classic Sufi teaching technique known as a koshiyun. It's designed to break through our intellectual traps. To show us this futility of, like, this endless search.
For answers.
It's not about that.
So it's not about, like, chasing after some future state of enlightenment.
No.
It's about being present.
Yes. Being present.
Like right here, right now.
Right here, right now.
In the messiness of life.
Exactly. In the messiness.
Like, that's it. That's all there is.
That's it. It's about recognizing that the truth and the divine spark, it's not separate from us. It's not hidden away in some distant realm. It's woven into the very fabric of our being.
And the key is not, like, more thinking.
No.
More striving, but just, like...
Acceptance. Presence, yes.
Like radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance, yes.
Of what is.
Of what is.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, makes you wonder, like...
Oh, no, right.
What would it be like to approach life from that place?
Yes, from that place.
Of just, like, radical acceptance.
Radical accepting.
Deep surrender.
Deep surrender.
Letting go of the need.
Let go of the need to control.
Control, to know, to be right.
Yes. It's huge.
Right.
That's the invitation, Yeah. The Sufi path it's extending this invitation to us. To step outside the confines of our limited, ego-driven perspectives. And embrace a reality that is far vaster. Far more mysterious. And ultimately far more liberating. Than we could ever imagine.
Wow. It's a powerful call to adventure.
It is.
It's like... asking us to leave behind all those comforts.
Of comforts,
Of how we're used to being.
Our familiar ways.
And embark on this journey of self-discovery.
Self-discovery, yes.
That leads us back...
Back to the source.
To the source of who we really are.
To the source.
And who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe like the Sufis say, the greatest discovery of all is realizing that we were never really lost to begin with.
Never lost.
I love that.
That's it.
That's a great place to end it, I think.
Beautiful, yeah.